We're live in 3, 2.
Welcome into Leather Brains. Your host, Slapdog here, and boy, oh boy, do we have a fun one. Now, before we start, I do want to apologize to all you brainiacs out there. It has been quite the roller coaster here on this show between myself being gone and now Scotty and Alan are both gone this week. However, I did bring a very good friend of mine, a special guest, a member of the Leather Brains team who does a lot of content over on the fantasy side of things. We have MK himself, Matthew Cahan. Hey, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's always a fun time to be on this show. When you sent me the text to come on today, I was very excited. It brings me back to the my first days back on this podcast, chiming in on a couple episodes. So I'm always down to talk ball with you fellas. You know it.
Yeah, and certainly appreciate it. We are, of course, going to be talking ball. Today, primarily, we're going to be talking about preseason, of course, because the preseason games just happened and there's a lot to dissect there. Some people are going to roll their eyes and say it's just a preseason game, and I completely understand, but hey, football's back, and I'm excited for it. We're all excited for it, so we're going to talk about that. And then traditionally here on this show specifically, we don't really talk about fantasy football a whole lot because we leave that to you guys over on the Fantasy Brains side of things. But we're going to be talking shop today for fantasy football. So for anybody who is about to do their drafts here in the redraft format, excited to pick your brain a little bit on some of that. So we'll finish out and round out the show there with that. So let's start with preseason, and I want to start with Matthew Stafford himself. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, he sits out of practice on Monday with a lingering back issue, despite anticipation that he would be ready for practice yesterday. So I have to ask you this, MK. Should we prepare ourselves for a year of Jimmy G? Is that kind of what this is shaping out to be? Because this is not exciting news. Sean McVay himself had said Matthew Stafford was going to be ready to go on Monday, and he was in street clothes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough situation. In all honesty, I'd be shocked if he wasn't there on the field week one. I mean, Stafford's had back issues for years on years of his career. And I know it might not be as bad as it is right now, but I'm really not that concerned with Stafford. And I think that he's 37 years old. There's going to be problems that you have when it comes to being that age. So I think with Stafford, he's one of the toughest quarterbacks in the league, if not the toughest. I'm not that scared about it. I know right now on a lot of markets, and if you look at kind of how drafts are lining up right now in fantasy football, a lot of people are bracing as if Stafford's not going to be there. And you have Puka falling, you have Devontae falling in drafts, and not to get a little too sidetracked here, but I'm completely buying the dip on that. I think Stafford plays week one, even if I still like Jimmy G, at least from a fantasy perspective, to run this offense. I think the biggest loser if Stafford's to miss time is Kyren Williams, just because the offense is going to be a little bit worse. But I do think that the receiving volume for those top two guys is going to be there.
Okay, good to hear. Let's actually talk about the preseason games.
Sure.
So we'll start out with the Saints. So Spencer Rattler is currently the starting quarterback for the Saints. In the people, we're talking heavily about Tyler Shough and what he did in this first preseason game. So he was a second-round pick this last year, and he went 15 for 22, 165 yards, threw a touchdown, also threw an interception.
Mm-hmm.
What were you? Do you have any takeaways from this game at all? Are you high on Tyler Shough? Is he somebody that could take over for Rattler, or is this kind of a non-factor in your mind?
Yeah, no, I definitely have an opinion on this, and I'm curious what you have to say as well, just from, I love Spencer Rattler. I've been a fan of him for a couple of years now. I think he's definitely an underrated quarterback. I think, before even getting into the preseason, one of the things to take note of is Kellen Moore, all of his coaching staff comes in. It's a new year. Rattler gets drafted last year. So for anyone out there who doesn't realize it, Tyler Shough, or Tyler Shough, however you pronounce it, is their guy. Rattler was the guy drafted by the old coaching staff. So I feel like going in, a lot of people had Tyler Shough as the guaranteed starter because they took him second round. But all the reports I've been seeing have been that Rattler has been a lot better in training camp. And that's not surprising to me. I think with Rattler, the one thing that you really get with him is high IQ when it comes to the football field. And I think that he reads the field beautifully. And he can process his reads going from the first to the second to the third read very quickly. And he also has that scrambling ability as well. So I think they give Rattler the shot to start week one. Like if they don't even give him a shot, I feel like you can't go back to him once you start Tyler Shough, because at that point it's like he's the second rounder, he's the rookie. But Rattler comes out, statistically didn't look as good in that game. But if you actually go back and watch the play-by-play, he had a bad fumble loss for sure where he gets sacked from behind. Besides that, I thought all of his throws looked great, put every throw on the money, was really completing some nice passes. Tyler Shough, on the other hand, also very similar, threw a lot of really good passes over the middle. But the problem with Shough is that the ability to read the defense not always there. You mentioned that interception that he threw. It also was a pick six. So those are the types of plays that I'm not as confident in him making compared to Rattler, where I think he might be a little bit more prone to making mistakes. So I think Rattler starts out the season, but I could easily see Rattler having a bad 3 to 4 games just because the Saints are terrible and them throwing Tyler Shough in there.
Do you expect the Saints to be terrible all season?
I think you have to. I mean, their roster, even aside from quarterback, is terrible.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
I don't think either of these guys is a long-term solution for the Saints. I think they're just trying to figure out what can we piece together to get through the season. And I've said on this show many times, I'm not even, a huge believer in Kellen Moore. And so I think that coinciding with the fact that this roster is completely depleted, if I was a Saints fan, I would maybe find another team to support this season at least, because I don't have high expectations for any sort of output from them, which is it's tough, but it's the truth. Let's pivot over and talk about somebody who maybe got some belief instilled in them, and that being Shedeur Sanders, Browns rookie 5th round quarterback who was projected to be a top 5 guy on draft night. Did not happen. And dare I say, MK, he looked good. He didn't look bad. And granted, look, he was playing against the second, third string defense guys, so he wasn't playing against a starting unit. But he went 14 for 23, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he got another 19 yards on the ground. His second touchdown, I had to rewind that and watch it a few times. It was threading the needle, to say the least. It was a beautiful throw. But I don't know what your thoughts are. This was a quote from Sanders himself. He said, "Did I play up to par? No, I don't feel like I did. But overall, the main goal was to win, and that's honestly what we did." He looked decent. He didn't look bad. Is there a chance that Sanders might be their guy? And I know that's crazy to say because 5th round quarterback, the Browns are the Browns, and Sanders, carries a lot of weight due to his name and the storyline of what has happened to him. But I think a lot of people were rooting for him to fail. I think most people thought he was going to be a non-factor and still might be in the NFL. But for him to come out, this was his Super Bowl. This was his I need to prove that I'm worth something game. And in my eyes, I think he did. And I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Shedeur played incredible. He had a great game. If you watch the completions that he made, he read the defense very well, put the ball on the money. He kind of showed everything that we saw out of him at Colorado. I mean, this was a guy that threw for 4,000 yards, 37 touchdowns. Like, statistically, he was one of the best passers in the country, and he was a projected 1st-round pick for a reason. Now, I think almost similarly to the Saints situation the question is he the best guy on the team? Potentially, but does that mean he's the guy for the future? I'm not sure. Like, I think Shedeur could definitely be a starting quarterback in the NFL, but is he ever going to be a top 15 quarterback? Is he ever going to be a quarterback that can win a Super Bowl? That's where it kind of loses me on the potential a little bit. And I'll give him even more credit. He was playing against some first stringers on that Panthers defense. The Panthers had some of their first stringers out there, and the Browns did not have any of their first stringers out there. So if anything, Shedeur was playing at a little bit of a disadvantage, and I thought he looked comfortable out there. I think realistically you're looking at, Flacco starting the season. I think they're going to be bad. The Browns are also going to be a bottom 3 team in the league. And I think by week 7, week 8, the fans are going to want Shedeur Sanders. And it's like, if you're 1-6 at this point, what do you have to lose by starting Shedeur Sanders? I'm curious, because this is something that I had kind of seen with Shedeur Sanders, is a lot of people kind of think that the reason that he fell so far is because coaches were genuinely scared that if they drafted Shedeur and the team didn't work out, or like, let's say you draft him in the 1st round or even the 2nd round, and there's the expectation for the team to be good and for him to start. And if the team isn't good, people are saying that they think that team would then fire the coach and hire Dion. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, because I think about it to myself and I'm like, You know what? That's fair. If I was a head coach in the NFL, am I taking the risk on this player when there is, you also got to think about your own career, that's on the
Sure.
line as well.
Yeah, no, and I've seen I've saw murmurs of that throughout this journey of Sanders, and I think it probably holds a little bit of ground, whether we want to sit here and admit it or not. And I think most people that are NFL fans on the surface level are going to sit there and say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, and that's fine. You can think that, but I genuinely think there is a little bit of that is going on, and we could talk about and I think up next, well, maybe we should discuss the Giants and Jackson Dart and what he did, but. You talk about a team that's in complete disarray and a coach that's on the hot seat, and they went with Jackson Dart over Shedeur. I don't think that's indicative of Brian Dable being concerned that perhaps Dad is going to come in and take over his job. But we already know Brian Dable's on the hot seat. And admittedly, I don't even think Brian Dable's the problem there. I think their front office has just done nothing to help him and give him tools to succeed. And, you can talk about Hard Knocks and Saquon and all those things that kind of came into play. Before we talk about the Giants, however, I want to ask you another question here. And this is going to sound outlandish, and it's about the Browns, but I've got to ask it. Is there a chance? Okay, before I ask this question, let's ask one more question. They've got Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. Somebody's going to have to go.
Yep.
Who's going to go in your mind? Who's not going to make the roster by the start of the season if they cut one of these guys?
Oh, man, it's so tough. So right now, Pickett is hurt. So there's a chance that they could throw him on the injured list to get around it. But it's got to be Dylan Gabriel getting traded. I mean, they're receiving trade inquiries about him. I mean, he was a third-round pick. Like, a lot of teams would take a young rookie quarterback as a backup because the backup quarterback is becoming, with the amount of injuries in the NFL, like having a solid backup is starting to be actually important. Like, teams are saying, hey, let's go out and get a decent backup. I think at that point, if you know Shedeur is your guy, go ahead, trade Dylan Gabriel.
Do you think that there's a chance that they might move off Shedeur?
No.
No.
I don't think you can business. Like at the end of the day, and at the NFL is a business, like I don't know what Shedeur's jersey sales are, but I have to assume that his jersey sales are not bad and that he's definitely going to help sell tickets. Like I actually don't know. I'm curious to see how many people showed up to that game, or it might have been in Carolina actually, but had it been in Cleveland, I mean, him or Kenny Pickett starting, like I'd bet that a lot of more people are going to show up if Shedeur is starting.
I would agree with that. And I'm really glad you brought that up because I tend to, this is a business. And while we sit here and we talk about the NFL as if it's our lives, because it is, like, this is a business for most people. And if it's going to sell jerseys, maybe it's not the worst thing to keep the guy around that's jerseys are going to be sold. But I bring all that up. I think Kenny Pickett's the guy on the block. I think if there's anybody that they're going to move off of, it would be Kenny Pickett. I do really like that IR thought there because I think that circumvents them having to do something immediately. But I think that when he comes back, I mean, he's losing valuable playing time. That's what it is. And he's losing the opportunity to get respect and admiration from the coaches to then earn the trust to play. And if he's not getting those and other guys are, that's tough. And I agree. I think Flacco's going to be the guy to start the season. And I think there is an opportunity that Shedeur, maybe by that week 7, week 8, might not be the case. But I to put a bow on this last question that I was going to ask you, and this is going to sound crazy. It's going to sound outlandish, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a chance, just a slim chance, that the Browns are waiting for Deshaun Watson's rehab to come back and want to give him another go? Is that even in the realm of possibility? We saw what he did last year. It was nothing. He got hurt. He's still there. He's still on contract for an exorbitant amount of money. Is there a chance? I mean, because they didn't take a quarterback early. They took 2 later round quarterbacks in Gabriel and Sanders. Is that even in the realm of possibility, or am I going crazy here?
I just can't see it being in the realm of possibility. I mean, he's coming off another major injury. He already was not looking great. I mean, I don't know what you get by putting him out there. I don't think he's a huge locker room guy by any means. Like, at the end of the day, with Shedeur, people are going to like him. Like that's kind of where it gets it for me. It's like he can bring a swagger to this Browns team where this team's going to suck. Like, let's be honest here. This team's going to suck. You're going to need some type of firepower on this team. And so, like, if I'm just thinking about when Deshaun Watson's going to come back, he's not a better quarterback than Joe Flacco. Just like straight up, age aside, not a better quarterback than him. So if you're going to go the vet route, you're going to stick with Flacco. And if you're going to go the rookie route, then you'll go with, Gabriel or Sanders. So
you think, I'm sorry to cut you off here. Do you think Stefanski's on the hot seat?
Yeah. I would put him on the hot seat personally if I was the GM of the team, but it's tough to judge with how bad their situation was. Because also Deshaun Watson, getting, his arm completely being shot after, 2 years out of the league. I mean, I don't know if you can necessarily blame that on Kevin Stefanski and, what they gave up to get him and
Yeah.
everything that came with it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's why I don't think it's necessarily fair to sit there and say, because I think Stefanski, we saw him put duct tape on a second string team just 2 years ago and find, a semblance of success. And so it's tough. I say semblance because it's still the Browns, but
He's the real quick. He's the guy that gets fired from the Browns. He goes to become the OC on the Eagles, and then they win the Super Bowl because they have a great OC and a great DC again. And then he goes and gets a head coaching job somewhere else.
And I'd argue that for Brian Dable as well. So
Sure,
let's talk about the
exactly.
Giants. I mean, what did you think of Jackson Dart's performance?
Yeah, Jackson Dart looked pretty good as well. I think Shedeur honestly looked better, just comparing them out of the two. I think Dart looked really good. He had a beautiful touchdown throw. I think with Dart, he's a project player. I don't know if he sees the field this year. I think the common thing to say with a quarterback like that is you see a lot of the wow plays that he makes. But I think for a player like Dart, it's about the consistency. And that was his big thing in college. Like when he was at Ole Miss, it was the turnover worthy plays. And it's about those plays where you need that consistency. I don't want to compare it to Anthony Richardson because it's not anything like that, but it's like he's the complete opposite of consistency, where it's like you don't want to get closer to that level where you'll have, some really good throws, but also some really bad ones. Because in football, it's a game of inches at the end of the day. So
Could I
yeah, go ahead.
Could I compare him? I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but I'm prepared for it. Could you maybe make an argument of a Josh Allen semblance? And I'm going to put like Josh Allen light, like extremely light. But I think some of the attributes are there. We know Jackson Dart likes to lower. I mean, he needs to learn how to slide based on this last game. But he's not afraid to run the ball. Neither's Josh Allen. He's a bigger guy. He's got a good arm, but kind of like Josh Allen was his rookie year, those inconsistencies, and who got that out of him a little bit? Brian Dable did. And so is there a potential there that this could work? Because I'm of the belief, I think that Jackson Dart will start this season. I think by week 6, I mean, Giants have one of the hardest schedules in the NFL. Yeah. And so I think by week 6, you start talking about that same conversation we just had about coaches who are on the hot seat and need to try and make some changes and try and vie for their career. I think there's a good opportunity. I think Jackson Dart starts week 6, week 7 this year, and just because they have to see what they have in this guy, as well as, if not, and the Giants continue to lose, that whole regime is done. I mean, that's just the facts. Like, Dable's going to move on. The GM, Joe Shane or whatever his name is going to go. Like, it's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be a turnover of a lot of people, I think.
It's going to be a really tough situation because it's just going to be so hard for the Giants to be good. Like I almost compare it similarly to the Bears in the sense where you have these high expectations for the team. And I know it's not the same with, people being on the hot seat, but it's the same situation where it's like you're looking at the other 3 teams in that division. You're like, yeah, these 3 teams are all good playoff teams. So if they finish 4th in the division, is that really them being bad, or is that them play in a really tough division? So I think the Giants are in a spot where we just need to see them be competitive this year and see them win games. Like if they win 6 games this year, but they compete in a lot of these games and they lose off 1 possession games and they look good, that's really all you're hoping for at the end of the day, because this team's not making it anywhere anyways. So I think with the
you'd almost root that they don't do well and
exactly
they get more draft picks, because
so
that is a very tough division as well. I mean, the Cowboys, the Eagles.
You have three teams that are all have very high hopes of making a playoff run and a deep playoff run. So I think for them it's about competing, and I think I do think that Dable and Shane and Joe Shane have a little bit of a longer leash, unless they have a complete disaster of a season this year. And
which is in the realm of possibility.
Oh, totally. It totally is. Very much in the realm of possibility. But I do think that them keeping Dable this year when they drafted Dart, it kind of signifies in my eyes that his career lasts as long as Dart's career does, in my eyes.
I agree.
Like, I don't know why you would move off of him. I know the Bears just did it. It's a different situation. Dable's obviously a much more proven asset than Eberflus was. So again, unless you have a absolute catastrophic season where it's like, oh, Dable needs to go, I just don't think he'll be gone after this year. That's just my take on it.
All right. Well, let's keep moving here. The Lions-Falcons game. I think the story of this game was the Lions safety, Maurice Jones. This was kind of a Damar Hamlin-esque situation.
Yeah.
Had to get an ambulance had to come in, take him off the field. There's not really a lot to unpack here. For anybody who isn't aware of it, it was pretty scary stuff. Maurice Jones is okay. He is doing fine. But my takeaway from it, I thought it was kind of a cool thing to see all the players from both sides coming together. They prayed at midfield. And I think this is just a heavy reminder for us, for the Brainiac community, for everybody that is in the NFL, that these are human beings. And, this is a physical sport. And at the end of the day, we're big fantasy people. And it's like, how does this impact fantasy? And so it's just a reminder, these are human beings, and this was a really cool thing to see despite the scariness of the situation. So tough look there, but I don't really think there's a lot to write about. Obviously, the game had to get suspended, so we didn't even get to watch the full game. But let's move over to Cam Ward, the 101 this year in the NFL draft for the Titans. Ward went 0-2 on his first drive, and then he in total went 5 for 8, 67 yards, and it looked like Calvin Ridley might be a potential option to own in fantasy football this season. What do you think?
I mean, Calvin Ridley has been my guy in fantasy for like 3 years now, where he's just underrated in every draft, every single season, and then he finishes higher, and then the next year you see him in the rankings, and he's lower than he should be. It was the same case this year. I've been putting propaganda out for him that with Cam Ward, I mean, if Ridley's able to put up 1,000 yards last year with Will Levis, I don't know how it's going to change or it's going to get any worse with Cam Ward. And, it's looking like right now Cam Ward is just peppering Ridley with targets. I mean, Ridley might be getting 10 to 11 targets a game, which would put him inside the top 5 to 6 receivers. So I think if you're looking for a high upside receiver, a lot of people are going to compare it to the Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin situation last year where Terry finished as the receiver 7. But I do think that the Titans are an underrated team. And actually, I put out a TikTok on this recently of why I think they could be underrated, and they could be kind of a Walmart version of that Commanders team. And what I really like they did similarly to the Commanders was they actually went out and built the O-line in the past 2 years. Peter Skoronski in the 2023 draft, not first overall, but their first round pick. J.C. Latham last year, first round pick. And then they added 3 offensive linemen who are all proven vets in free agency this year. So I think if you're looking for kind of the build of how you want to build around your rookie quarterback, I actually think that Cam Ward could have a good season because the O-line will be able to protect him.
Sure. No, and I tend to agree with you there. I don't have high hopes for the Titans in general, but
of course,
I think that, it's not, as Alan always says, it's not the sexiest thing, but when you're trying to, stabilize the team and find some growth, pick the offensive line. Go get the big guys. Stabilize that offensive line because they're paramount to your success, whether it be the run game or the pass game. You need those big guys to be able to block efficiently so that way you can drive the ball down the field. And so I like it. And I think, there's not a lot of pieces on the Titans that get me excited, but Calvin Ridley is one for me that I'm definitely targeting in fantasy drafts this season, given where his ADP's at. So I was curious as to your thoughts, and it seems like we're kind of co-aligned.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was going, as the receiver in the mid-30s at one point. I mean, it was just like guys that are going ahead of him that, like Chris Godwin was going ahead of him at one point, and Godwin's going to miss the first 4 games this season. And I was like, this is crazy that we're taking, players that have a torn ACL, coming off a torn ACL over a receiver 1 with, in my opinion, just kind of getting a little sidetracked, but Cam Ward, I know it's been talked about, is just so underappreciated by the NFL media and just has not been talked about. And he had a terrific season last year. Yes, he didn't win the Heisman, but Miami was a great team. Genty and Hunter were both just had incredible seasons and obviously deserved to win the Heisman over him. But Cam Ward was absolutely incredible. Miami was a much better team with him. And I think that as an overall passer, I think he gives me vibes as Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, like that type of quarterback where he can make any throw on the field. Now, obviously, I'm not comping him to Patrick Mahomes' level of greatness and level of clutch that he has. But in terms of his play style and the plays that he actually tries to make and the way that he plays, I think that I see similarities with those quarterbacks. And I think that he's going to be a very fun player to watch in the NFL.
I kind of agree with you there. Talking about somebody who should have been a fun player to watch in the NFL and has been largely a bust, let's chat about Anthony Richardson here for just a moment. The Colts, they keep on colting. I mean, I think that should be a verb at this point. they stated that Anthony Richardson was going to start this last preseason game, and he did. And then Daniel Jones will start this next preseason game, which keeps everybody just trying to figure out what the hell's going on there. Who's going to be the guy? What is this outlook of this team going to look like? A lot of people are hoping it's Daniel Jones, and then you have some people who are saying, let's give Anthony Richardson another shot. So they did in this game, and it was rather short-lived, to be honest with you. Richardson, he got trucked by a defender that came in untouched, and I'm sure you've seen the hit, but it looked absolutely brutal. I was watching that. I own Richardson in Dynasty, and I watched him get hit, and I go, oh, he's done. I'm like, his career's done in this hit right here. All said, it was a dislocated pinky, which looked, it looked crazy. Like his pinky was like out on the side. It looked very painful. But I'm, so then I'm kind of reading a little bit more about this. And when I found out about this, I was just awestruck. Why on earth would the Colts not start their starting offensive linemen? I get it. You don't want these offensive linemen to get hurt, but everybody knows that Richardson is a glass house. He's one hit away. Like he's constantly struggled with injuries. Why are you rolling him out here with not your best pass protectors if you're going to pass with the guy? And granted, I will say it wasn't the offensive lineman's fault that he got hit there. It was the running back clearly did not block when he should have. I watched that and was like, that running back should get spanked in front of everybody in the Colts team meeting next week because he failed tremendously. But I'm bringing up Anthony Richardson. Wasn't great. And so it just still leaves us all reeling as far as what is the Colts going to do here? Is Daniel Jones going to be the guy? Is Richardson still the guy? What do you think?
Yeah, so I will say, so on that blitz where he gets hit, that was actually completely Richardson's fault. He was supposed to pick up that blitz and get somebody to block him. And so he actually just didn't do that and didn't pick up on that blitz, which is the biggest issue of anything, is the fact that, again, he doesn't have really a high IQ when it comes to reading defenses. And so I think with Richardson, it's kind of been similar to what a lot of people have been saying for the past year or so. Could he become a solid quarterback? Maybe. Like, he can make any throw in the book. He can run. Like, he can give you all those things. But I just don't know if he's ever going to be the quarterback that you're going to want being your quarterback long-term for your team. I just don't know if he'll be able to put together that short consistency, being able to make the consistent throws, to be able to convert, consecutive 3rd and 5s. I just don't think he's going to be that guy. Now, Daniel Jones is certainly not anything special, but I think with Jones, you get to run a lot more of an actual stable offense. And I think it's good for the development of the other players on the team, such as Josh Downs or Tyler Warren, like some of their other younger assets. And I think that with the Colts, similar almost to the Saints and the Browns, like I think the Colts are going to be one of the worst teams. I think they're going to be a bottom 5 team. I think they could finish last in the division. And I think that, they do have some pieces that are good, but the team doesn't really scream anything exciting. And so I don't think that, you can really move forward with Richardson, but it's like, are you really going to get much more by starting Daniel Jones? So it's like, I feel like you might as well go out there, give Richardson some game reps if he's healthy. And if he's terrible, go start Jones for the rest of the season and be done with it. Get on to next season at that point.
Yeah, I think in all the probable outcomes, the most likely is that both these quarterbacks are not going to be around for the Colts for much longer. And I'm interested, Mike Tomlin, of all people, had kind of called on Richardson's availability this offseason in a potential trade. And so does he get an opportunity somewhere else? Could he end up somewhere else and maybe vie for a quarterback spot? I think at the end of the day, just like what you said, it's between the ears. It's the mentals for him, and that's where he largely struggles, and that's where I don't see a path for success, at least with the Colts. Maybe if he goes to an established team that can teach him how to read a defense maybe a little bit better, potentially. But I think his largest obstacle to overcome is himself. And I think that's 100%. The biggest problem for him. Talking about obstacles, let's talk about CeeDee Lamb here real quick. He got trucked by a ref when he wasn't even playing. It was probably the hit of the week aside from the Richardson hit. He was where he shouldn't have been, and a ref was running downfield. CeeDee was facing the other direction and got smoked by the ref. I saw this and I laughed and I thought, good for the ref. I'm glad he got a hit in, because why in the hell are you standing somewhere where you clearly shouldn't be? There is a spot on the field look, I didn't even play at the collegiate level. MK. I was a high school guy. There is a clear space where you are not supposed to stand. You need to stand behind this line because this is you're going to get penalized for it. And the Cowboys did. I don't really have any analysis here. I just thought it was hilarious, and I wanted to point it out.
Dude, if CeeDee Lamb, for those who don't know, is my favorite player in the NFL. If CeeDee Lamb had gone down and gotten hurt for 6 weeks of the season because of that, with how hype I have been for him, how good he looks right now, I genuinely would have just quit. I would have been done for the season. It would have been all right, pack it up. Let's get ready for 2026 at this point. But you got to be more aware than that, man. I mean, you're one of the most prized players on this team in the NFL. You got to be smarter than that. That's really all I got to say about it.
No, I agree. That would have been just devastating to lose him for multiple weeks. But also, I would have been serves you right. Serves you right a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we don't get to talk fantasy football here a lot. Usually we are following NFL narratives. Most recently, we've been breaking down a bunch of the different divisions here, but I wanted to put a bookmark in that today because we have somebody who is very, very well versed here, being you, MK, in the fantasy landscape, and I figured the season is right around the corner, and all of us fantasy football players are itching for thoughts, ideas, don't draft candidates, etc., etc.
Sure.
And I think we could have some open discussion about this upcoming season and fantasy football specifically. So I brought a list of questions here today, and this is going to be more of a free-form conversation, but we'll kind of structure it around some of these questions and talk shop here a little bit about fantasy football. And I want to start with this. So this season specifically, are you taking more of a late-round quarterback approach to your draft strategy? Obviously you're going to have those top guys being Lamar and Joe Burrow. And I will preface this. Some of these questions are going to be based upon where you're drafting at in the draft. So let's take a step back from that and just have an even more open freeform conversation. I don't want to say, okay, you're drafting 5th overall. So what are you thinking here? Because it's going to be based on team buildup. But prototypically, obviously we're in a lot of different fantasy leagues. We're doing a lot of different drafts. We're in a lot of different positions. What are you finding yourself doing more? Are you taking the Josh Allens and the Lamar Jacksons and the Joe Burrows in the early rounds? Or are you kind of fading those guys and maybe taking a Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott-esque kind of guys later in the draft?
Yeah, so I think, you kind of nailed it on the head at the first. The most important thing, I think, this year is playing the board, how it lies. You got to play the board. You don't want to reach too much. Obviously, if you're only in one league, you can go ahead, go get your guys and, not take the guys that you don't want. And I'm going to be talking, I think we should, everything that I'll say is based off a redraft perspective, for this year.
Yes.
Not best ball or anything. I'd say for me, I love getting one of the top 2 quarterbacks. If I can, get Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, I'm all in on taking them in the 3rd round. I think is a very fair price for them. You're talking about rushing upside for both those guys, obviously insane passing upside, both going to be MVP candidates. I think you can pretty confidently mark those guys down for a great week every single week. Honestly, after that, that's where you start to get into Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Burrow. I honestly would like to kind of fade the quarterbacks in that range. I like to also kind of fade Kyler Murray at quarterback 7, Baker Mayfield at quarterback 8. I do really like Mahomes. I think Mahomes is a great option at the quarterback 6-7 range. But I think the value of these guys that are going in the 9 to 15 range and even 9 to 20 are awesome this year. I mean, Brock Purdy, I think, is going to be a terrific quarterback. I love Dak Prescott this year. You just even have your late guys with Jordan Love and Jared Goff and Justin Herbert, and you have Nix, Caleb, and May. There's just so many guys that if you're in a 1 quarterback league, in my eyes, if you're not getting one of those Lamar or Josh Allen, I think you just wait and you stack up on 2 of those guys in the 10 through 20 range, and then one of those 2 guys is likely going to be, in the top 10. So I would just try to, do that, and then you either play by the matchups or one of them just ends up being clearly better than the other, and then you start them for the whole season.
And I tend to agree with you. That's kind of the strategy that I'm going in, and I was curious to pick your brain. That's as I'm going through my draft process for my different leagues, I find myself waiting a little bit more because I do think that some of these guys have the potential to crack the top 10 pretty handily. And you could almost kind of stream some of them. Years past, and depending upon how far back you go, That wasn't always the case, I don't think, where it was like you had your guys. These were the quarterbacks that were prototypically going to kind of be in that top 10 area, and those were the safe options. And this year, there's a lot of youth, there's a lot of new changes in a lot of offenses, and there's a lot of promise for opportunity there. And that's what I kind of like about some of these later round guys. So, I want to talk about Drake London here for just a second. I've seen a lot of people in the fantasy community very incredibly high on Drake London with his potential to finish as a top 5 wide receiver this year. Are you buying that hype?
Top 5 is tough. Like it's so tough. And I think like you just mentioned it, the league is becoming very, very talented. Like there is a lot of talent in the league coming in. There are a lot of really good players. So it's like top 5 receiver, Drake London could have an insane season and still finish behind Jamar, Jefferson, CeeDee, Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins. Like, and those guys are also elite. We saw a very small sample size of what it looks like with Drake London and Michael Penix last year, and it looked great. The target share was certainly there. I think Drake London is a very good player. He can do everything on the field. He's a very good red zone target, which I think is huge because you expect this Falcons offense to score a lot of touchdowns this year. I'm not buying the hype on top 5. I think that there's just too many mouths to feed. I think Bijan, excuse me, I think is going to be the top option on this offense. He's actually my number 1 player in fantasy this year. And I really like Darnell Mooney. I think that, and I don't love Kyle Pitts, but he's still going to get touches. So I just don't know if London is as big of a game breaker where Jamar Chase can go out there and take a screen for 70 yards. I don't know if London has that big playability like that to be able to inch himself into the top 5.
Okay. Well, and we were talking about the Falcons. You mentioned his name, and Scotty's not here, and Scotty's our notorious Kyle Pitts no matter what guy. Are you willing to get hurt by Kyle Pitts this year in fantasy football?
I am.
Are you willing to draft him?
I am. I think this is the year to draft him, and I'm not saying because I think he's going to be good, but it's because why not at this point? He's going as the tight end 17 in drafts or, the 16 to 18 range. If you're going to get a tight end with his, he does have talent. We all know that. He has athleticism, he has speed, he has size, and he's playing, again, in a good offense. And I think the most important thing for tight ends in specific is you want tight ends in a good offense because tight ends, for the most part, unless you're a Brock Bowers or a George Kittle or a McBride where you have so many touches manufactured for you, tight ends score a lot of their points based off how good their offense is. So if you're a tight end in a great offense, like a Mark Andrews, for example, you're going to score a lot of touchdowns because Lamar's going to throw for a lot of touchdowns. So I think if you're banking on the fact, if you think the Falcons are going to be a good offense this year, then go ahead and pick up Kyle Pitts, because if Penix is going to go out there and throw for 3,800 yards or 4,000 yards, Kyle Pitts has to have at least a decent season. Like there's no way that he doesn't.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No, I understand. And I think, if Kyle Pitts was going in the 5th round again, I think this would be a very different conversation.
Of course.
But he's continued to drop because he's continued not to perform year over year. I think where, if he's at tight end 17 this year, I mean,
there's
why
no
not
risk.
take the dart throw on him? Yeah,
there's no risk. I think
aside from getting made fun of for rostering Kyle Pitts again.
Of course. Like it's a great backup option. You can't go into the season being like Kyle Pitts week 1, and then get burned by that. Like you just can't have that. But you get a guy like an Evan Ingram or like a Mark Andrews or a Tyler Warren, pair him up with a Kyle Pitts,
which I'm high on, by the way.
Yeah,
Tyler Warren, I'm very high on. Well, let's keep this tight end train rolling. Let's talk about Brock Bowers. I've seen Brock go as early as the late 1st round. Are you willing to do that in a non-tight end premium league? Are you willing to take Bowers at the end of the 1st round? And in addition to that, what are you expecting from this Raiders team given Genty landing there? They added Geno to the mix. Is Brock Bowers a buy for you at the end of the 1st round? And do you feel comfortable with that? What are your thoughts?
Non-tight end premium, I'm not taking him in the 1st round. There's no way I'm taking him there. I do think in the 2nd round, he's a great value. You get the positional advantage with him. I will say, there are reports that Geno has been absolutely targeting him like crazy. But this Raiders offense is going to be very interesting. You have a ton of new pieces. You have a brand new quarterback coming in, brand new running back. You have 2 rookie receivers that could get a lot of playing time. So there's a lot of new moving pieces. And obviously you have Pete Carroll, and a new head coach. So
Well,
One thing,
old, very, very,
very old
very
head
old,
coach, but new head
but new for
coach.
the Raiders.
In terms of the Raiders, their defense is genuinely so terrible that they're going to be losing these games, which means that Geno Smith is just going to be able to go out there and absolutely sling the ball, which is great for Bowers. It's great for Jacoby Myers, who's one of my top sleepers this year. I think Genty, is going to catch a ton of passes this year. He's going to have a great season. I think this Raiders team could just put up a lot of garbage fantasy points. Like, they're going to be losing these games and they're just going to have to be playing this fast-paced offense a lot of the time, that I think that there's going to be a ton of volume available in this offense, and that's where I do like these players. So I'm fine with drafting Bowers at ADP because I think the offense will score a lot of points.
Are you concerned with Genty drafting him at current ADP, given the fact that, you just kind of mentioned he'll be usable in the passing game, but they're probably not going to be controlling a lot of games and relying on their running back to kind of control the ball and the clock, et cetera, et cetera. Genty feels to me like you're drafting him at his current, like at his ceiling, like where he currently is going. He's already drafted at his ceiling. Is there a concern that maybe he doesn't finish as the RB2 or RB3 this year, just given the fact that this Raiders team isn't going to perform at a high level?
Yeah, so right now you get Genty as like the RB5. I usually see him right after the top three, and then you have McCaffrey, Genty, Henry, and Devon Achane as kind of that next group. So I would group Genty right in there. I actually prefer him over all of those guys except for maybe Achane. So I would have him at the 4 or 5. I think with Genty, the great thing about it is, one, you have the high draft capital. He goes 6th overall, which means that with how many needs the Raiders had, there's no way that they're not going to feed him the ball. He's proven, obviously, last year how productive he actually can be on the football field. And then on top of that, like, they're going to feature him. While they might not run the ball a lot, they're not going to run it less than 15 to 20 times a game. Like, they're still going to have to run the ball. You're still going to run the ball on an offense. So I could still see Genty going out there and having games where he'll have 15 carries for maybe 60 yards and a touchdown. And then he also gives you 5 catches for 30 yards, which turns into, that's a 20-point week at the end of the day. So
sure.
You
prefer him over Christian McCaffrey?
I do, because of the injury risk.
Okay.
So I think
Genty
feels so good from a durability factor. Like, that's what I really like about Genty. It's like I feel so safe with him. Like, I don't know how to describe this, but if you just watch like Genty and kind of his build and how he moves, it's very similar to Bijan, where his body can just move in such crazy ways, is really good for durability. Like, I don't know if you remember when Bijan took that crazy hit in the back in college, where like his entire body folded.
Yes, I do remember.
Genty has the same type in my eyes of like flexibility, like body frame, durability. So like I just see him as such a sure option to go out there and play well every week. And that's what I like about him.
Would you feel comfortable stacking him and Brock Bowers together?
No. I don't like doing that anyways. I don't really like having players on the same offenses because I think it lowers each play, only one of your guys can hypothetically get the ball. So
sure.
I actually prefer not, especially when it comes to those early rounds, to not stack those guys.
Okay. I have one more question on the tight end train here. Mm-hmm. Do you think George Kittle finishes as the tight end 1 this season?
I love George Kittle. I could easily see it. I don't know if it'll be the tight end 1. I actually think McBride right now is going to be my pick for tight end 1, but I think Kittle is a surefire, top 5, top 3 tight end. Offense cannot get any worse than it was last year. He's going to be the number 1 option on this team, even over McCaffrey. I think he's going to be the best player. And so him and Purdy have a great connection. I think he's good for 80 catches, a little bit north of 1,000 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns like he puts up every year.
Well, and you'll notice I didn't mention when we were going over pregame, I didn't talk about the Cardinals and how maybe Kyler should have thrown it to McBride as the checkdown option instead of forcing it into triple coverage with Marvin Harrison. So that would be my concern is Kyler Murray. And that's coming from a Cardinals fan. But let's talk about Travis Etienne. He finishes, the RB2 just 2 seasons ago?
Yep.
And then he fades into non-existence this last season. They've got Liam Cohen there, of course, Travis Hunter. They're making a lot of changes here. Are you willing to take a shot on Travis Etienne where he's currently going in drafts? I think he's like middle of the 8th round-esque is kind of where he's going right now. Are you willing to take a shot on him there?
Yeah, so he's kind of in like the mid 30s for running backs, like the start of the RB2s. And we discussed this a little bit over text. I used to be a huge ETN guy, like loved him, loved the player profile, him being a good receiver. And the reports out of camp are that, and in this preseason game, are that he's going to be the number one back on this team. He did not look good last year. I mean, he
No.
looked awful. And I'm not even just saying statistically, because there are players that have bad years, but you're like, okay, they just like got unlucky. ETN just looked horrendous. And I am worried about him in terms of his value of staying on the field. I think that Tank Bigsby is a significantly better runner when it comes to in between the tackles. So I think when it comes to any type of goal line work, any type of, early down work, I think Bigsby is going to be the guy in this offense. But I do like ETN's receiving volume. I like his chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. So I think he's a very solid RB3 on your team. I think he's a good player to put in on bye weeks. I think he's a good player if you have an injury that can come in and give you a safe 10 points because he gets you, 3 catches for 35 yards and 5 carries for 20 yards. I think
I
he's going
don't
to be that
have
type of player.
this number in front of me, but I want to say DeAndre Swift is kind of in that same range in the drafting. Who would you rather have at this point?
I'd rather have Swift, just a much more, much easier backfield to get a lot of snaps in. And I think he has like a little bit of a better share of the early down work. Like similar to ETN, I don't think he gets the goal line. But in Jacksonville, I just think that when I look at their running back room, you have Bashal Tutin, who, 4th-round pick. A lot of people liked him early on in the offseason. But my guy actually in this backfield is Syracuse running back LaQuint Allen, who is a 7th-round pick, but he's like your prototypical do-it-all running back. 6 feet, good speed. He had last year 1,500 total yards, 20 touchdowns, and 65 catches. So, and again, like Syracuse is a, Power 5 school. He's playing good competition too. I genuinely think that they could move off ETN come midseason because ETN's on his 5th year, and I don't think they re-sign him. So I think they could move off ETN, which could be better for ETN if somebody's trading for him. But I do actually think they will move off of him, seeing that they took 2 rookie running backs in this draft class.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's keep talking about rookies here. Let's talk about Tetairoa McMillan. Drafted early in the first round this last draft. What do you think about Tet? And, Bryce Young obviously saw some improvement towards the end of last season and looked like a completely different quarterback than he did prior to getting benched for Andy Dalton. Do you think that Tet is kind of what this team needed, what Bryce Young needed? Are you interested in him for fantasy football? Like, where's your mind at on Tet?
Yeah, so when I scouted Tet, honestly, not a huge fan of what I saw on film. Didn't really like his skills translating as much to the NFL. I think as a player, his floor is very high. Like, I think he will be a good player regardless in the NFL. Like, there's no way that he's not going to. It's almost similar to how I felt about Romo Dunze last year, where it's like he's a high IQ player. He understands the game. He produced in college at a very high level. But I just wasn't seeing the separation from him. I wasn't seeing an advanced route tree. And I'm not super high on this Panthers offense, but I do think what you have to give McMillan credit for is, one, he gets taken inside the top 10, which is always great to see. But also, Bryce Young has been targeting him a lot in training camp, and he is clearly the number one receiver on this team, which just always means the volume is going to be there. So I think he's a fine pick. I honestly have not been taking as much from him because, again, I'm not as high on him as a player. But I do think he's a very solid wide receiver 2 in fantasy, where he could finish in that wide receiver 15 to kind of wide receiver 30 range. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he disappointed a lot of people this year, similar to Marvin Harrison last year, where, a lot of people are like, oh, he's the number one receiver and, all the volume's going to be there. And then when he actually gets into the true competition and teams starting to kind of understand how he plays, he doesn't produce as much. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but
sure. I think the big disparity
line
there is Marvin Harrison was a 2nd-round pick, and I want to say Tet's going like late 5th round,
of course,
like mid to late 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
So I in the event that what you're saying comes to fruition of him maybe going wide receiver 15 to 30, you're not going to get burned as bad
Yes.
from drafting him too early.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think my disparities come more on the dynasty form because people are
Sure.
ranking him really high. And I'm like, in my eyes, I don't know if he's ever going to be this top 8 receiver in the NFL. I don't know if he'll be top 10. Like, could he be in the wide receiver 15 to 20 for a while? I'm sure he could, but it's more with the upside thing is my thing. And that we just talked about him, but this is a guy that I just specifically want to talk about. I want your opinion on Marv. And how he's going to do this season. And I can give you mine after, because I definitely am starting to form a strong opinion about how I feel about him in this offense.
You might have and look, I'm a Cardinals fan for anybody that doesn't know. You might have a very different, and I'm curious to see I don't know if I have a strong opinion on him. I really don't. And I own Marv in Dynasty, which is it's a little bit of a roller coaster. My biggest concern is Kyler Murray. And I said it earlier in the show is Kyler Murray. And for me, there are a couple things at play when we're looking at Marv, and now you're going to get me on the rant here. He was a rookie last year, right? And very obviously from the collegiate level to the NFL, there's a huge difference in talent and what that means. There are a couple things that I think Marv does great. He got huge this offseason. He's yoked. Looks really scary, and I wouldn't want to cross him on the wrong side of the street. But for me, it was more of an offensive and a scheming thing, as well as his route running ability last year. I was kind of watching it, and he looked slow in some of his breaks. He didn't look very shifty. And that's not to say where Marv, I think, did pretty well in college was his contested catch ability, and I think that's where he's got good hands. What I think went largely against him was the off-script stuff, which is how Kyler Murray performs as a quarterback. And some of the things that I was screaming at my TV last year were our offensive coordinator. I think he's terrible. I think Drew Petzing is an idiot. And because the way that they were running that offense, I was like, this isn't how Kyler Murray excels. Like you would watch the Cardinals in one drive, they looked tremendous, and they'd be like, oh dang, they're finally starting to click. And then the next drive, you'd be like, what happened? And it was just so wishy-washy. Part of it was the play action. And I like, that's how Kyler Murray really thrives, is off play action. He doesn't thrive in the pocket. He thrives outside the pocket. And I'm going to make a joke here, and people are probably going to completely understand. He can't see over the offensive lineman. That's part of the problem. So why does he perform so well when he's not in the pocket? Because he can't fucking see. So run the play action boots. Get him outside the pocket so he can actually scan downfield, and that's where Kyler Murray really thrives. And so still my biggest concern is Kyler. And with Marv, that is still my biggest concern, is is he willing to take the dart throws and the contested catches and throw the ball to Marv? I hope to see that this year. I think Marv is talented, but I have some concerns.
Totally. I think that's a pretty good analysis, honestly, especially for you being a fan. I think that's a very fair baseline analysis of what it is.
So come in and tell me that you're so high on him and that I'm completely wrong and that I have nothing to worry about.
I wish I could tell you that, but I'm actually on the opposite train. And so Marv is one of anything, he is becoming my least favorite player for redraft. Now in Dynasty, he's 22, 23 years old. Like, he's got time to grow. Kyler Murray might not be around for that much longer. I have no clue. But in terms of this year and where Marv is going, Marv's right now, like, he's going in the wide receiver 15 to 20 range.
I was gonna say, he's probably what, third round?
Yeah, like, he's early third round for the most part, like going pretty high. I just really struggle to see how he can perform much better than he did last season. And so you mentioned it with the scheme, like, that's an issue. Kyler Murray, I've been anti-Kyler Murray for years and years on end. And I think with Kyler Murray, the issue is, like you mentioned, he can't see that well. And that makes it hard for him to throw to the outside receiver. And I think that's why McBride is such a big target for him, because he's right over the middle of the field. And I think it's a little bit easier, not even just for Kyler, but for quarterbacks in general, to have a safety blanket over the middle. And then I think you pair that with the lack of separation. And that was a really big issue last year. I mean, you look at, I don't remember how many receivers were in this, but it was all the receivers that had like 100+ targets. He ranked dead last out of separation per route. And that really
I saw it. Trust me, I watched.
Yeah, it was very surprising to me coming in, because he was a good route runner in college, and he was able to put some moves on people, but the speed is not translating as well as people had hoped. And I think that a lot of people are expecting this jump when I haven't seen much difference. Like, I know they were posting a couple like practice clips of Marv having some really nice catches. And I'm like, anyone who genuinely knows Marvin Harrison is not surprised that he's making that catch. But what
Yeah.
I'm looking to see is him to start putting some DBs on skates, him to start, running some really good routes. And
He
I
doesn't
think
have the twitch factor.
the twitch
I think
factor, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, could he be in a scheme where he could get schemed open a lot better? 100%. Like, I think if he was on the Rams, I think he could do a lot better in that offense because they would know how to use him more. But I think in this offense that the Cardinals are likely to run, I just don't see how he's improving much from what he was last year.
Which is kind of interesting because, I've been following the Cardinals not forever, but for a decent chunk now. And you look at somebody like DeAndre Hopkins, who kind of is of a similar archetype, big body,
Totally.
outside guy. And Kyler had a lot of success with him. And, obviously a lot has changed from, the personnel perspective and the coaching perspective. And so, Kingsbury was there then, and obviously he's not now.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's also the piece where it's like, that's why I kind of dig at Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator, because is it him? Because Kyler was able to do it with DeAndre Hopkins, and look, DeAndre Hopkins, generational wide receiver, incredibly talented, a proven vet, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on, but kind of similar in that way, right? Where they're the big body outside guys, and Kyler was utilizing him a lot, and so that's where it's like I'm not completely out just yet, and part of that's probably fandom, but the other part is like I've seen it before, and obviously a lot has changed, but like I know it's possible. Can we get back to that? And that's where I have my hesitations.
No, yeah, it's definitely not over. Like if Marv went out and had a better season this year, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm super shocked. Like this is more what we saw from the college perspective of him. But it's like it is a little bit worrisome, I feel like, for Cardinals fans that you in last year's draft class, which is so stacked, that you might have ended up getting the fifth or fourth best receiver in the class, which is because I mean at this point you can already pretty much bookmark that Thomas and Neighbors and maybe even Ladd are better, and then it becomes Marv and Odunze are kind of the next grouping of players. But I'm just not excited for the Cardinals this season. I just don't see how they will be better than they were last year. Now I really like what they did in the draft, and I love the Will Johnson pick, and I like they got Walter Nolan first round as well.
Yeah,
and so I really like what they're doing in terms of the team that they're building. But
they built a defense.
But it's a defense, and I think it relies on. I don't think you can extend Kyler again. I think you got to move on. You got to try something different. Obviously,
well, I think the writing's kind of on the wall there for that, and sure. That's how I looked at it as a fan as well. Is like instead of doing a lot to bolster your offense, you really doubled down on making sure you have a solid defense, which I'm excited about. I think our defense will be decent this year, and obviously our head coach is a defensive-minded guy in Gannon, but why didn't you do anything in the offense? Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of alludes to maybe you're just kind of seeing how this pans out this year, and maybe you just move on from Kyler. And I'm not opposed to that. Yep. So he's not really that prototypical leader that you want back there taking the ball. He's arrogant. He's not really a team guy in my mind. So I'm okay moving on from him. But let's go back. Like I said, you could get me talking Cardinals ball all day, but let's get back to fantasy here a little bit. I know we were talking fantasy-esque, but every single year, it seems, MK, every single year my fantasy drafts, the third round always bites me in the ass. And I don't know why. I always just take terrible guys in the third round. Last year it was ETN. Allen Robinson comes to mind from years past. Like the third round is just the scariest time for me. And I don't want to focus on the third round, but I want to focus on the fifth and the sixth round guys, because I think there's certainly opportunity there. Is there anybody that is a clear kind of outlier for you as someone who should maybe get pushed up the board, or you're looking to take maybe just a little bit earlier in those rounds in the fifth and sixth area?
Yeah, sure. So we talked. I mean, Ridley is a player, and he goes like maybe a round later. Couple players that I do really like. I like James Conner a lot. Very solid running back, very good every season. I still think the Cardinals offense, like I said, it's going to be similar to what it was last year. And so I think Conner will have a very similar role to that. Like Kamara a lot as well. Goes a little bit earlier, maybe in the late fourth, early fifth, but another player that has consistently been great every single year of his career, and the offense can't get any worse than it was last season. So I think on the running back train, you're looking at those guys. I think the receivers, this is where you have a really big tier of guys. And I think that I'm honestly on the train where you can kind of pick your poison and kind of just go with whoever you want. You have guys like George Pickens, who I think could have a great season. I really like Jameson Williams this year to have a great season. You have Travis Hunter kind of getting around in that mix. You have Xavier Worthy in that mix, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle. And to be truthfully honest, I can't even say that I'm low on any of those guys or even higher on any of those guys because I just think
They're
that
right at ADP value for you.
they're all just the same player. It's like they're
Yeah.
all like a receiver 2 that's talented, that's on a good offense. Like throw Devonta Smith in there too. Like even Tet McMillan, throw DJ Moore in there. Like it's like I group all those receivers together. And so I think it's really just, how is your team formatting? If you need more single game upside, go out there and grab Jameson Williams so that you have a player that can go off for, 25 plus points. But if you need more consistency, maybe you go out there and you get like a Jalen Waddle who might be more consistent and get you 5 catches or so. So I think with those receivers, it's really just personal preference, based off who you have so far and how
Sure.
those matchups work. I think the last player that I really do think is a good value in this range, I think Sam Laporta is a very good value this year. Not as high on what the Lions offense is going to be, of course, comparatively to last year. It's going to hit a huge regression. Even if Ben Johnson was still there, it would still hit regression.
Sure, because their defense was hurt last year, so they had to perform.
They also had legitimately an all-time offense in the regular season. So I think that with the Lions, what it's going to look like, especially with knowing that the games are going to be a little bit closer this year, I think that Sam Laporta could come in and have a really good season. And I think he could, where you're drafting Brock Bowers and Trey McBride round 2 and George Kittle now in basically round 3 or early round 4, I think Laporta can come in as the round 6 value and maybe sneak into those elite tight end and into that elite tight end group where you're not spending a premium pick at the tight end.
Sure.
The year before, tight end 1 on the season only averaged 1.4 points per game less than Bowers and McBride last year. So Laporta in 23 averaged 1.4 less than Bowers and McBride in 24. So I think with Laporta, offense, again, I don't think they can be.
There's a lot of mouths to feed, though. There's a lot of mouths to feed.
100%, and that's going to be the issue. But I think the touchdowns is where you can really. You
still feel safe with Amon-Ra St. Brown, or is he somebody that you're maybe more hesitant on than years past?
I like Amon-Ra. I'm definitely a little bit more hesitant on him because I think Jameson Williams could take a higher step up. Amon-Ra had a ton of value last year off touchdowns. Like he scored a ridiculous amount of touchdowns. It's just this Lions offense with Goff at the helm. There's just so many good weapons that it could be a little bit inconsistent. But I think on the season-long basis, assuming that Goff is going to throw a little bit over 4,000 yards, I just think it's pretty safe to assume that, Gibbs going to have a great year. Amon-Ra, J-Mo, Laporta. Like, there's no reason why all of them can't eat. It's just going to be in different ways. Like, maybe Amon-Ra goes for 100 catches this year, but he only has 6 touchdowns. And Laporta goes for 10 touchdowns. And so that can put them both into that elite tier. It's just about how it differentiates.
Is Goff somebody who you might be targeting in those late rounds because of the weapons that he has surrounding him? Is that like a good target for you? And obviously, we are expecting regression and all of this, but the team is still there. And so what are your thoughts on him?
Yep. So Goff is a player that's right now going in like the quarterback 10 through 13 range. Honestly, do not like that price at all. We talked about how many great quarterbacks
he's finished top 10 the last couple of years.
I have been the biggest Jared Goff guy in fantasy for the past 2 seasons. Just saying him going as quarterback 16, 17 in years prior was absolutely ridiculous. But I definitely think that this offense is going to take a hit with the loss of Ben Johnson. And I'm not saying that Goff can't finish high again, but I just like the values of the guys behind him. Like we talked about it. Like if I'm going to go between Goff and a guy like Drake May has the rushing upside to put him higher than a player like Jared Goff. Whereas I could go with a Drake May and then grab a Jordan Love at quarterback 18. So I have my heavy pocket passer quarterback that maybe has a higher floor. And then I get a guy with higher upside that can use his legs. So I'd much rather have Brock Purdy in that range. I think Goff compares more similarly in my eyes to guys like Trevor Lawrence in fantasy this year. I think Jordan Love. I just think at that point, they're very similar players, going to be guys that are throwing for a ton of yards this year, could be throwing picks, but they don't have as much rushing upside, which I think is just always going to cap how high Goff can be as a quarterback. And that's where I would kind of refrain on taking him if he falls, or if you get Amon-Ra or like a Laporta. I like the stacking option there, but I'm
Sure.
not like head over heels to take Goff like I was in past years, because his price has gone up and the players behind him I think are better than they were in years past.
Okay. Got a couple more questions here for you, my
Yeah.
friend. So there are a lot of rookie running backs that came into the league this year and were drafted pretty highly.
Yep.
Between all of these, which one are you the highest on this season? And we'll exclude Genty from this conversation because
Yep.
obviously we talked about him and he was very highly drafted. So kind of like the Amarian Hamptons, the Hendersons,
Yep.
the RJ Harveys, like which one of those guys are you most high on this year?
Yep. So Hampton, I am very, very high on now. The loss of Rashawn Slater at left tackle is a massive loss for the Chargers. And so that does affect Hampton a little bit in terms of the overall O-line play. So I will say that I was a little bit higher on Hampton before this, but Najee Harris's eye injury is one of the worst kept secrets in the NFL. Like, he genuinely like cannot open his eye right now. I'm not saying that he won't play this season, but he hasn't taken any reps, which just means that Hampton's getting everything with the first team. Najee Harris was not on the Chargers last season, so it's not like they know what he knows what it's like being in this offense in real game-like snaps. So you're talking about Hampton, who at one point, even in redraft right now, is going as like the RB 16, 17. He has top 8 running back upside with his receiving value, with his overall value as a running back. I mean, he had 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns last year. I mean, he can do it all back, first round pick. So I think Hampton is definitely the clear guy. And I think, Travion Henderson is also going to have a really good season. I think the issue with him, and he was actually the first running back that I ever scouted this year, and I loved him. But I think with the way that I see it, I don't know what his ceiling is as a player, because he's never proven to be a bell cow back for a full season. And so that's where my issue is, where it's like he looks great on these plays and his receiving volume makes him a great asset. But I'm worried, can he handle a full workload of an 18-game season? Can he do all of this for that long? I'm not exactly sure. And so that's why before all the Judkins news happened, I was actually Judkins over Henderson, because Judkins had all 3 years in college with 1,400 yards, 10 plus touchdowns. And I know that he could handle that workload. So I comped Judkins more to like a Josh Jacobs, and I comped Henderson to like an Aaron Jones type player, or like a Jonathan Taylor maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, Judkins probably won't play at
Of
the
course.
rate he's going. Okay. Late round sleepers. Let's talk 12th round and beyond. Is there anybody that you're really looking at to grab? Like, and we're talking late guys. We're not talking like they're probably not going to make your starting lineup every single week, but they have an opportunity to potentially do it. Is there anybody in the later rounds that you're kind of looking at?
Sure. Yeah. So another guy that this is my receiver 1 in the class, was Emeka Egbuka. And he's raised a lot in training camp and preseason. So he's not even really that much. He's kind of like the 10th round. So I'd say Egbuka is a great play this year, because great offense, and Godwin's going to miss
2 injury-prone wide receivers.
Yep. And so there's a ton of opportunity, and he is just the do-it-all receiver. Been getting great reports, goes first round, even though they have a stud receiver room. So I love Emeka Egbuka. I think some other values, I really do like Jake Ferguson this year, fresh off a contract extension. I think the Cowboys are going to be a really high pass volume offense, especially if there continues to be issues with Micah Parsons. They're going to have to be playing from behind. So I think that Ferguson, while you do have Lamb and Pickens, he is the clear third option. And 2 years ago, when the Cowboys offense was great, Jake Ferguson was, a top 10
He was
tight
usable,
end.
yeah.
And I think he was a tight end 7 on the season. And I do think he is a talented player. So, and they rewarded him with the extension. So I like Ferguson a lot in terms of his value. Trying to think who else. I'm trying to think like a really, really late sleeper. And I think I got it now. Again, another guy.
Is it Cedric Tillman?
No, but I do like Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman is solid, but Jalen Coker is a very, very interesting player. Undrafted last year, but came in towards the end of the season when there were some injuries and actually put together a string of some really good games. He might not start in the beginning of the season. because they have a crowded room and Adam Thielen is still there. And Adam Thielen is genuinely also, even though he's 34, a good receiver.
Well, and he's also the translator for Xavier Legette, so
Yeah.
somebody has to do it in the huddle for him.
But I don't know if you saw, Legette gets tossed in the first quarter of the game, which is not great for him. I actually think that Coker is going to take over that wide receiver 2 role on the outside over Legette. And I think he could be great there, but he's a slot receiver. So if Adam Thielen goes down this year, which again, 34
Yeah.
player that
Yep.
almost every year of his career has at least missed like 4 to 5 games. I think Coker could be a league winner because you put him, he gets that slot role. Bryce Young loves the slot. I think he's a guy that could go for minimum 5 to 6 catches for 60 yards every week. And then you throw touchdown potential on top of that. I think he's going to be a very,
I like
very
that one.
good player. So
I like
Jalen
that.
Coker, I'd say towards the end of your drafts is a player that I'm definitely looking to target.
Okay. I got a couple more questions, but we're running a little low on time. We'll see what we can do here. I want to talk handcuffs for just a second because, and I'm not talking about the police here. I'm talking, is there any late round handcuffs that you're targeting despite clogging up a roster spot? And what a handcuff is, for those that don't know, is a backup running back. Typically, that's kind of and because Jalen Coker, you could argue maybe is kind of a handcuff-esque player, but I was more in like a running back fashion. Mm-hmm. Is there any handcuffs you're targeting to keep just chilling on your roster?
Yep. So I actually posted something about this recently, but Tyler Algier is an obvious handcuff. Because I think with handcuffs, what you're looking for is, I'm not even going to include a player like Jordan Mason or Zach Charbonnet in here because those guys are going as like legitimate RB3s. So I'm not even going to include them. I'm talking strict guys that only have value if the starter goes down. Tyler Algier is a player that has proven in the past that he can be a good fantasy running back if given the opportunity. And obviously the offense is going to be good. So I think if Bijan goes down, Tyler Algier is going to be, right now he's going as like the running back 40 or 50. I think he is a really, really good option for, a late round handcuff, especially if you have Bijan. I think he is very solid.
Okay.
Will Shipley is another player that has gotten a lot of hype. Dabo Sweeney talked about him when he was drafted to the Eagles and talked about that he loved Shipley because he's a very fundamentally sound player. And he also has some really nice speed and acceleration. So reports out of Eagles camp are that he is the clear number 2 over AJ Dillon. So I think that, and aside from being the number 2, he is also would be the pass catching back if Saquon went down, and they did lose Kenny Gainwell this season. So I think Will Shipley,
lose is a loose term.
He's
no longer on the team.
He is no longer on the team. A guy that might have gotten some third down snaps. So Will Shipley is a player that I also think is definitely worth holding because similar to the Falcons, like, the Eagles are a great offense. If Barkley goes down for a couple weeks, Will Shipley could easily give you some great weeks. And then I got one more that I think it's starting to really pick up steam.
Can I guess it?
Go ahead.
There's two. There's two that come to mind. I'm going to say them both, and you tell me if I'm right.
Okay.
Is one of them Trey Benson?
No.
Isaac Guerendo?
No.
Okay, then who is it?
Both those guys, good options. Obviously, Guerendo's like, McCaffrey's so due to go down. So, of course, I think that's another good one that you mentioned. Sean Tucker, I think, is a great handcuff to have this year. Been getting a ton of good coach speak recently at training camp.
Yeah.
Rachaad White actually did just get hurt in the preseason game. But this is a little bit more of a separate take. I think with this Buccaneers offense, now obviously Bucky is the guy, and he's going to be the 3-down back for as long as he's healthy. But even though Rachaad White is the number 2 in a lot of people's minds, I think if Bucky goes down, Sean Tucker assumes the entirety of the goal line work and the first and second down work. I think Rachaad White has standalone value as a receiving back. I think he's a good third-round back, good third down back, good pass catcher. But Sean Tucker has been looking great. He was great in college. He had a 30-point week last week when he was given opportunity. So I really like Sean Tucker as a player where if Bucky Irving goes down, I think Tucker's actually the guy that's going to come in and get 15 to 20 touches a game, mostly on the ground, and could get you, 100 rush yards and a touchdown if Irving goes down.
He just got picked. I didn't realize he was on waivers in my Dynasty League. He just got picked up today.
Yeah.
So I was pretty sad to see it. So I really like that take. I think, and I tend to agree with you. I think Rachaad White's on the outs, and in the event that something happens with Bucky, he's a great own.
Totally. Like, he's just like, as a downhill runner, he is terrific. Like, he can break tackles. He's explosive. And so that's exactly everything that Rachaad White cannot do. And White is a better pass catcher, which is why I'm saying he'll still assume that third down role, but they're going to need somebody to handle that rock and that they can rely on. And I think that Sean Tucker is the guy if Bucky goes down. So I think he is a great handcuff to own, and it's becoming more well known, but definitely go pick him up if you haven't.
I was going to say the Brainiac community now knows, so it is well known.
Yep.
But perfect. Hey, MK, we've ran out of time here, my friend. We could talk this all day. We'll have to probably have you on here again in the not so distant future, because I love talking fantasy football. I know it is that time of year.
Yep.
So you mentioned you're putting out a lot of content. Obviously it's fantasy football. Where can these guys find you at?
Yeah. Go check out our site. You know, we're obviously all under Leather Brain. So Charlie and I have been putting a ton of great content over there on the Fantasy Brain side of things. We're doing a series right now, 32 team series, where I'm going through every single team in the NFL and basically giving my outlook on them for the season, how I think everyone on the offense that's fantasy relevant is going to finish. You know, looking at stuff like the depth chart from last year to this year, stuff like, you know, the fantasy football forecast, looking at strength of schedule. So it's a lot of good stuff, and the episodes are fairly quick, you know, only about 20 minutes. So definitely go check that out, and, you know, hit the subscribe button and let us know what else you want to see in those videos. Would love to get you guys more content.
And I'm being completely honest, they're phenomenal videos. So for anybody who is looking for fantasy football content, go check out that 32 team series. They're coming out almost every other day. It feels like, over on YouTube. So go check that out at the Leather Brains YouTube channel, and anywhere else that you are consuming content, we are there. So go hit that subscribe button. It's MK is a part of the team here and really focuses on the fantasy stuff. So it was a pleasure to have you on today. Like I mentioned multiple times now, we typically don't do this. It's more narratives and headlines, but it was fun talking shop with you today, my friend.
It's a pleasure to be on this show as always. So thanks for having me on, and I'm just excited for football season.
It's coming, baby. It's coming. All right, let's get the heck out of here, MK. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.